also a future where we're going to see a lot more assaults within our jails. And Bruce spoke about the conditions in jails and about the need for treatment in there. That's not what the reality is going to be. As we put more and more people in facilities that are not designed for that, there's going to be violence in there. There are going to be lawsuits. There are going to be charter challenges. And I will speak in a few moments about another country that can tell us something about that. These lawsuits and challenges will cost us. They'll cost us both financially and very much in human terms. After this legislation was passed, if implemented, it will put huge new costs on both provincial and territorial governments. And whether those costs are in the hundreds of millions or in the billions, they're huge, and they're money that we don't have right now. They're coming at a time where I don't think any provincial government has the resources they need to do what they're doing now, let alone put a lot more into jails. This approach, we've heard what the effects are going to be on people, but this approach also simply crowds out a lot of money that could be used for something productive. And while it sounds simplistic, we maybe have to ask the fundamental question. If we had $1 or $1 million or $1 billion, where would we first invest it if we wanted safer communities? Would it be in mental health services? Would it be in housing? Would it be in the battle against poverty? Would it be to develop social programs? Would it deal with things like pensions for seniors? Would it look at education, early childhood education? You could fund a universal daycare system with this. But the federal government has decided that they're going to sink our money into prisons. And this isn't a decision that just affects other people. It's going to have an effect on all of us. The estimates are that about 6,300 additional people are going to be placed in jail. In British Columbia, that means it could be anywhere between 700 and 1,000 additional people in jail. The provincial government right now has a plan to build 300 new beds, and that leaves a gap, a huge gap. Now, on the numbers, there's all kinds of costs that are bandied about. I think it was the independent budget officer who suggested about $55,000 to build each jail cell, $117,000 on average to house an inmate for a year. If BC was going to build 500 new beds, and that's half of those that are needed, even at that rate, it would cost $30 million, and my suggestion would be it would cost much more than that. And that money is going to come at the expense of other things: classroom, health facilities, valuable community resources, you name it. Here in Victoria, in our community, there's going to be a need for additional beds at Wilkinson Road. If you use the average around, at least 50. $3 million to build 50 beds, I think it would probably cost a lot more than that. The infrastructure up there on Wilkinson Road would have to be improved. Couldn't we find a better use for that $3 million of capital construction, let alone the cost of running the facility on that? Now, this is going to cost a lot of money from taxpayers to keep this going. And I find it interesting now that some of the very people that back the current federal government, such as the editorial writers in major newspapers, are now saying, oh, this isn't the time to spend this money on this approach. It's a time to hold on. This comes shortly after they encouraged us to cast our ballot that way. We're also going to face a future where we're extremely hard-pressed to deal with offenders when they come out of jail. And remember, we're not making any changes to dangerous offender designation here. The plan, if we could call it that, is simply to put more people in jail for longer. They're going to come out. Already, our transition services for people coming out of jail are pushed to the max. We don't have enough of those services, and now there's going to be a greater demand on that. I think we really have to ask the question, and I think the answer was given to us, is where's the proof that this works? Where's the proof that locking people up makes communities safer? And the simple answer to that is nowhere. There's an old phrase I heard a long time ago that if you can't be a good example, at least be a good warning. And our friends down in the United States have given us a very, very good warning. And I'm going to cite two examples. California. California went on a prison as a response to crime scheme a long time ago. By 2010, 11% of their state budget went to locking people up. 6.5% went for higher education. Those costs were driven by determinate or fixed prison terms, mandatory sentencing. Did nothing to make their communities safer. Now, the California prison system has been ordered by the U.S. Supreme Court, that bastion of liberal thought, to reduce their custody count by 25%. And that's what they've been ordered by the Supreme Court of the United States to do because they are overcrowded. Texas was referred to, and Texas is known for many things. Oil, jails are two of them. Their use of jails outstripped any other U.S. state, and the result, very, very clear. As a primary response to crime, it doesn't work. It didn't result in safer communities. Now, the Texas lawmakers, who I think are not known as a liberal group, have come out, and many of you have read the articles, I'm sure, about them, and they've given us the modified Nike phrase, just don't do it, it doesn't work. But there are things that do work, and I think the tragedy beyond the human cost of this legislation is a loss of opportunity if we don't put the money where it has a real effect. And we know what some of those are. Good educational programs, focusing on early education, is a proven way to make better people and better communities. Mentoring programs for youth, and we have good mentoring programs here in Victoria. Some of you sitting out here are probably volunteers in those. That works. We have a wide range of community justice programs, and British Columbia has a long history of diversion and alternative measure programs that work. We need to do more of those. Restorative justice programs, they work, and they make sense. Transition programs for inmates that are coming out of jail not only work, they're absolutely essential. And finally, and perhaps one of the most important ones, are employment services. Not finding people jobs, developing the skills so people can find their own jobs. And we have a long history of those, and we've had a lot of effect with those. It's far more effective to help an offender get employment than it is to keep them in jail for a longer period of time. And these are services that work. The tragedy here is that the funds to support those programs, the funds to expand those programs, are going to be very much at risk because we're wasting money on a very misguided effort to make jails the response to all crime. Thank you.